we should be having more people step in, just like we did with the morning session. The morning session was about leveling up your money. If you missed that, I'm so sorry. It was one in a million type of session where we learned so much, especially what is currently happening in the community, or sorry, in the economy. Um, Ola was the trainer for that session, and she did justice. She did justice as it's in regard to yeah, Alexandra, the recording is gonna be made available. We will definitely share that. It should be accessible within 24 to 72 hours thereabout. But definitely we will make it available for those who couldn't attend. But it's always best for you to be live just so you can share your questions. So I just wanted to talk about Ola. Ola's session was amazing. You're welcome. Alexandra. Ola's session was amazing. I'm so excited I was there. I learned more than enough about leveling up your money. It's amazing what we're doing. We haven't done this before. So the Wentors Women Gather is an event that one of our Wentors sort of hounded us and said, Dora, you people have never done anything for Wentors. It's usually for Wenties. And we said to ourselves, well, you are, you're saying the truth. However, we do have something in the groundworks that should be coming up in August. And she said, okay, fine. She's going to wait. And she waited. And here it is. It's called the Wentors Women Gather. It's an event that this is the first of its kind, but it will definitely be an event that will go on for years and years to come. It's going to be an annual event specifically to celebrate our Wentors. And for those of you who have never been a Wentor, what do we mean? A Wentor is like you when you say a mentor, but for Wentors, it's Wentor, right? For a better lack of word, we want to use this opportunity to celebrate every woman since the launch of our company in 2020, where we get women or women come on board, volunteer their time, volunteer their knowledge, their skill, and they provide mentorship to that woman out there who wants to upgrade, to upskill, to bloom and thrive in technology. And I'm just so excited to be part of the impact story, where we have seen so many women come across our pipeline who have walked the journey with another woman and taking her to the next step. We're really excited for that journey. So that is why we have the Wentors Women Gather. And thank you to everyone who is here. Thank you to our community members. Also, thank you to the team who has worked tirelessly to see that we're able to launch this. In today's call, I just want to do a little introduction before I move on to the next agenda. I have Anita. Anita is just smiling away. Really don't know if it's because I'm so beautiful and she can't resist it. I think that's the case. So Anita is our lead, is our program coordinator here at Wentors. We also have Wendy. Wendy just put off her camera. I'm not sure why. Probably she's cam shy. I doubt it. But she is. So Wendy, you're blurry if you're trying to show. Okay, now we can see you. So Wendy is our brand and comm. She is an amazing, intelligent woman. You should check her out on LinkedIn. We got the best of the best. And then we have Unoma. Unoma is our founder at Wentors. Edu couldn't be here. We're hoping that she will step in real soon. Edu Abasi is also the founder at Wentors. But I'm going to move on to Oma because we have something that we have been cooking, and Oma will provide a lot more information on that. Hi, Oma, please go ahead.
Hi, Dora. Welcome, everyone. Some of you were here for the earlier session. Thank you so much. Thank you for the new ones coming from the afternoon session. Thank you for actually making out time on a busy Friday to join us twice on the call. So we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I must also thank you for all the work you've done as Wentors. I thanked the Wentors in the morning. I'm going to thank you again in the afternoon because that is just the level of gratitude we feel for all the years you've stuck by us and stuck by your Wenties and all the knowledge and impact that you have passed down to the next generation. So thank you. Like Dora mentioned, right? We are launching a new version of Wentors, which we call Wentors 2.0. And that's going to involve us, issuing new ways of mentoring, giving access to women like yourselves to our Wentors in a different way. We're going to be moving from the cohorts way of doing mentorship to one-on-one and group mentoring, right? So, and it's going to be on demand, right? So pretty much we call this the personalized career roadmap. So in other words, you're going to work with somebody one-on-one for 5 years. You're going to work with somebody one-on-one for 5 years. No, you're not just working with them for 5 years, rather. You're going to help them develop a 5 year a 5 year plan on their career. We will help you with the templates, but that's the expectation. And also, there's going to have monthly power sessions every month. We're going to have a mentor talk to in a group mentoring session with about 3 to 4 mentees on what exactly to expect in as a woman in tech. You're going to be, passing down your knowledge. And like I said, it's going to be on demand. So that means that we are most likely going to need more of your time. But we are not I won't say we are very mindful rather of the fact that because you're giving us more time, it's only fair for us to give you back some value in return. So what are these are the things that we're looking to help you to give to you, our beloved, loving, fantastic mentors, right? We're going to giving you exclusive workshops on advanced leadership skills. It will be free to you. We're going to be giving you group sessions on personal branding for tech leadership, right? How you should brand yourself so that you ensure that you'll continue to rise on your career ladders. We're going to be giving that to you for free. We're going to give you exclusive access to our Women Gather events and workshops. We're going to also be giving you free workshops on investments and how to manage your money. We're going to be giving you access to free workshops on mental health care. And of course, you're going to be featured in all of our social media. We'll do features Wentor by Wentor to amplify your brand, pretty much saying that, look, this is our mentor, Alexandra, and she's worked with us for X number of years. She's fantastic, mentored X number of women. So just pretty much amplify your brand. We'll be doing that on all our social media pages for all our mentors. These are the things that we're hoping to give back to you because we love you. We are also taking feedback. If you think there are more things we can do for you, please don't hesitate to send an email to Dora, Anita, or anyone in the Wentors team. We'll definitely consider it and see how we can be packaged and all that we give back to our Wentors, because you've been so fantastic over the years. We're 4 years old, Wentor is 4 years old, and we couldn't have gotten here without you guys. We couldn't have been impactful without you guys. So thank you and welcome to the new Wentors, Wentors 2.0. Looking forward to working with you even more closely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Oma. That was amazing. I think this is a good part where we could just, put up an emoji, a comment, something that just shows the excitement. Thank you so much, Oma. You have done justice to that. Wenters 2.0 is launching and we're launching big. We're going to make it. We want to create more impact for that woman in technology. So thank you so much, Oma. We're so excited, to see what the Wentors 2.0 has. We're going to be moving on, to the next round, which is what a lot of you have shown up here for. We do have a speaker in the house. Her name is Chioma. Chioma is a professional clinical psychologist. She is a mental health counselor. She doubles as the founder and CEO of Twin Olive Fee Clinics, a global standard mental health service organization, and also My Eden, which is a nonprofit organization that caters to mental health needs of postpartum women. Chioma has over 8 years of experience in providing quality mental health and wellness support. She has garnered expertise in mental health intervention and wellness. One thing I read about Chioma that struck me was where she mentioned that she has delivered effective intervention and social wellness support for over 6,500 clients across the globe in her 8 years of mental health service. That is just alarming. And I don't understand how she did it. But I'm so excited to share with you all Chioma today. Hi, Chioma. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm just in awe of the work that you do. I can't but say thank you. Thank you for being here today. Please take it on. And before she does, I just wanted to share. I did say this, in the first session, in the morning session with Ola, and what I said was, get as much juice as possible. This session is going to be interactive. We will ask some questions that a lot of women have never asked before. I'm going to make sure of that. So please ask your questions. We want to get much from Chioma. I want her to go home as always and say, those people took away everything from me. And that's the goal. Hi, Chioma. Please take it on.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me? Or rather, good
Yes.
afternoon.
Good
Okay.
afternoon. Could you put on your video? I don't know if you have
All
it on
right.
already.
Can you see me?
Great. Yes.
All
Go ahead.
right. Good afternoon. How's
Afternoon.
everyone doing?
We're good. We're good.
All right. Okay, let's go straight into it. I'm glad to be part of this. Like I said before, I'd love to. Whenever I see a women-led organization, it sends back a message to me because I am very particular about women led organizations. So, yeah, so I like to smile a lot. Don't mind me because it's therapeutic, right? Okay, so let's dive into it. First of all, we're going to be talking about. I have a couple of things that I put down that we'll talk about and would also take questions regarding these things, right? So, first of all, let's talk about stress, right? So stress is it's a very big problem, especially in the workplace environment. But so many people don't take it seriously. Sometimes people go to hospital for different cases like headache, and then some other very bad problems. But the reason why they're experiencing these things is because of something as simple as stress, right? In my several years of practice, I've been able to identify that stress can cause a whole lot of sicknesses that we may not know that stress is the reason why we're experiencing that, right? Are you hearing me? All right. So we're going to be talking about stress. We're going to be talking about um, romantic relationships and how we can navigate, manage our family and be able to give attention, provide love, and all of that, and also navigate our career, especially as women. That, as women, I don't know for other countries, but I usually say it that in Nigeria, it's not easy to be a woman. I don't know if anybody shares the same opinion, but it's not because if you're a mother, if you're a wife, you have to navigate all those offices, the office of a wife, the office of a mother, and also be there in your work environment, right? So we're going to be talking about how do we navigate this and ensure that there is equilibrium and ensure that none of them is being affected. Your career is not being affected. You're not giving up your career to be able to maintain your relationship, and you're not giving up your relationship to be able to maintain your career. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about overwhelming emotions, and we also talk about how to cope with burnout, right? In a work environment. How do you cope with burnout? How do you even know that you're already experiencing a burnout, right? So we're going to talk about that, and we also talk about how to communicate our needs and how to set boundaries. I'm particular about that topic because, especially as Wentors, right? You may want to give more and give and not take care of yourself. So I would like us to talk about how do we set boundaries and not feel guilty, because it's actually very difficult when somebody is asking you to do something for them and you know that you're not able to do it, or that when you do it, it's going to affect you in some way, but you still go ahead to do it because you're feeling guilty and you're feeling like, oh, I have to do this. So we're going to talk about that. How do I set healthy boundaries? How do I ensure that these boundaries are being maintained? Right. And then some other things here. How do I also handle the pressure of being a role model in for other women in tech without compromising authenticity? All right. And the last one, what are the healthy ways to deal with FOMO? Right. Some of us are familiar with this word, but it means fear of missing out on personal milestones due to career demands. Right. So, first of all, we start with stress. All right. So, stress is just in simple explanations, stress is like your body's response to a stimuli or a stressor in your environment, right? The whole process that goes through the body when the body has to respond to an environmental stressor or something in your environment that stresses you. Right? I don't want to keep using the word stress, right? I'm trying to find another word to break it down. Like, well, some things that kind of stretches you. Let me use that word stretch, right? That stretches you. That's what stress is like. Whenever there is something as simple as um, postpartum period, I like to use that. For some people, it is just a regular happening, but it can bring about stress, right? So, are we following? I'm feeling like I'm rushing. Am I?
No, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, because usually I look at the facial expression of people when I'm talking. I want to be sure that we are following. I want to be sure that I'm making sense. I want to be sure that I'm not just running and running and running, right? So, can someone else tell me if you're following, right? Do I have to slow down? Because I know that I've said a lot of this within this few minutes.
No, so we do have comments here, and Iwurama says we're here. Deborah says yes, ma. Paying attention. We are with you, and yes. So carry on, please.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I already said that stress is like your body's response to a stressor in your environment. When there is anything that kind of stresses you or stretches you, or yeah, stretch. Let me just use that word. You know that you're already stressed. No matter how small it is, no matter how irrelevant you think it is, whatever it is that stretches you, especially beyond your capacity, we would consider that as stress. And when you allow stress over time, it becomes a problem, right? Sometimes we don't take cognizance of these things early enough. We just, for instance, I would use emotional stress. When you're in a relationship with someone who probably has narcissistic tendency or who has personality issues, and this person keeps doing and doing, taking a toll on your emotional health, and you don't recognize that you're being emotionally stressed and you don't do something about it, over time, it will degenerate to mental health condition. Not all the time, but sometimes stress can lead to mental health conditions, right? And it can also lead to some bodily reactions that could also present as sickness. And sometimes here in Africa, here in Nigeria, I like to be specific. You know, sometimes people will say, "Oh, I went to the hospital. I was sick. I went to the hospital, and doctor said no, they didn't find anything wrong with me. I think it's spiritual, right?" And sometimes it is, and they might take several medications, and the symptoms are not going away. And at the end of the day, it's not a biological sickness, or rather, it might have degenerated to a biological sickness, not because there is a bacteria or there is a fungi, but because there is a stressor. And if this stressor is not removed, if it's not properly managed, this person might continue to take medications to treat the symptoms of what they consider symptoms of what they're experiencing, but they may never get better until these stressors are removed from the environment and the stress is properly managed, right? So that's how bad it is when we are undergoing any form of stress, emotional stress, work stress, family life stress, and whatever kind of stress that you can think about. So let's now go into what stress looks like in the workplace. Sometimes when we talk about stress, most people would think it's, oh, we're talking about physical stress. When I have to lift up maybe 50 kg of workload and all of that, right? But physical stress, when you're physically stressed, you can just go in, rest, and sometimes you may feel better. But when you are emotionally stressed, when it has to do with mental stress, it is very, very dangerous, right? Because mental well-being is very, very important. To maintain homeostasis in the body, we need to be in a state of mental well-being. In fact, the WHO defines mental health or as a totality of mental well-being, not the absence of mental illness. Right? When some people, when they do not have any mental illness, they say, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm okay mentally," but there is stress. I'm okay mentally, but there is some other things. So it doesn't, when your mental health, mental well being does not only mean the absence of a mental health condition, it means that you're in a state of mental well being. So if you're experiencing stress and you're experiencing the symptoms or the effects of stress, you cannot say that you are in a state of mental well being. And if there is no mental wellness, you would likely not be able to function effectively. First, you will not be productive. Second, you would you wouldn't even be productive at workplace. Sometimes we have seen people who are very productive in the work environment, and you begin to wonder, suddenly this person can no longer meet deadlines. Suddenly they start to make mistakes that you're wondering, how can you make this kind of mistake? Mistakes that are not regular, or mistakes that even a child can make. And then they become forgetful, and then they become irritable. Someone that would usually sit with you and talk with you, if you just talk to them just a few seconds, they don't want to be around you. They don't want to, I'm not just in the mood to talk, right? So when you see these things happening around someone that you know, just know that stress is involved. It could be stress, it could be mental exhaustion, the person could also be experiencing burnout. So now let's talk about the things that can actually cause stress in the workplace. One thing that can cause stress in the workplace is overworking, right? Overworking in the sense that you know your capacity and you're taking more than your capacity, right? That is a very dangerous thing to do and can exhaust someone mentally and can cause mental fatigue. And like I said, when there is mental fatigue, when there is mental exhaustion, you cannot function, right? So sometimes I recommend that when you want to take on more responsibilities, you have to enlarge your capacity. When you do not enlarge your capacity and you take on more responsibility, sometimes why people take in more responsibilities beyond our organization, beyond the Wentors organization and some other places that we are working, sometimes why people take in more responsibilities is because probably they want to make more money. Let's be realistic, right? But then, when you take in more responsibilities and you haven't enlarged your capacity to handle those responsibilities, you're setting up yourself for stress, for mental exhaustion, and for burnout. When someone comes with a job and you know that your capacity is not enlarged to accommodate this and you accommodate it, you're setting yourself up for mental exhaustion, for stress, and for burnout. Right. So, one of the things that can cause mental exhaustion, burnout, stress in a work environment is to take on responsibilities that you know that are beyond you. So before you take in responsibilities, before you do anything, before you do any work, or before you even want to enlarge your work base or whatever it is called, you need to check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I just doing this because, oh, I want them to know that I can work, or I need money, or what, for whatever reason why we would want to do that? You need to find out if you have the capacity to do this. And if not, you need to enlarge your capacity. Let me come down to very realistic examples, right? For instance, you know that an adult, there is a required hours of sleep that is required. And you know that, okay, when you get home, you can, for some people, they can make up for the sleep. If you don't sleep in the night, you can sleep in the day, probably because your day is not that occupied. But when you know that the only time you have to sleep is in the night, and you have, okay, you were not formally doing that particular thing, and then it comes in that, oh, for the next 6 months, I have to be doing this, and it requires you to stay awake almost all through the night, and then you accept it. You haven't put measures in place to ensure that if you don't sleep in the night, you can make up for it in the day. You're setting up yourself for stress and mental exhaustion. And research has shown that if you deprive somebody sleep for 72 hours straight, there is a possibility that the person will start hallucinating. I don't know if you know what hallucination is, but yeah, hallucination is like hearing, seeing, things that are unreal, that other people are not hearing, like feeling things that other people are not feeling, like, oh, I'm hearing a voice talking to me and all of that. That is what hallucination is, right? That's the basic way I can define. So if you deprive somebody sleep for 72 hours straight, that's 3 days straight, there's a tendency that they can start hallucination. So that's how bad it is when we don't get enough sleep, right? Sleep is very, very important. So for something as simple as sleep, you go ahead to accept a job and you know that you haven't built your capacity to be able to sustain yourself. So yeah, that's it for um one of the things that can actually cause stress in the work environment, right? Doing more than you know you can do. Let me just put it that way. When we do more than we know we can do, right? That's one. Two, another thing that can cause problems in the workplace, that can cause stress, is not managing work relationships very well. Sometimes we just assume that because somebody is your colleague at work, or yeah, colleague, or maybe your fellow Wentee, or fellow, yeah, something like that, right? I hope I'm using the word right. So maybe we feel like this person is my friend. No. In the work environment, you have a colleague, not a friend, right? Your colleague may or may not be your friend. So if you're in a work environment, you need to understand the dynamics of relationship and not have certain expectations that are unrealistic. So problems in relationships when you have expectations, or when you share things that you're not supposed to share, and then tomorrow you start hearing things that you're not supposed to hear. Something as small as that can disrupt the work environment. When you try to get information that does not concern you, that does not that you're not supposed to know. Some people go as far as wanting to know what others are being paid. I'm talking about in a paid work environment. They go as far as wanting to know what other people are being paid. They want to know how other people see me. What are they talking about me in the work environment? Do they say I'm good? Do they say I'm bad? Do they say all those things that are irrelevant? That especially when you haven't learned how to properly manage criticisms, and you go about trying to find out, or when you have learned how to manage criticisms, it might not be a problem because you may take those criticisms and make good use of it. But when in a work environment you do things that are not necessary, like trying to know informations about how do they see me, what does this person think about me, or how much are you being paid, or am I doing a better job than you, are you doing a better job than me, or having expectations about your colleagues that are actually the expectations you should have with a lover or with a friend or even with a family. And then when these expectations are not met, you start feeling bad, right? So these things can stress someone in a work environment, right? Another thing that can stress us in a work environment is when someone is not being properly appreciated, in the sense that when you're in a work environment and you feel like your feelings are not being taken into consideration, you are underpaid, and things like that. Being underpaid, feelings of inadequacy, or I'm not delivering well, or I'm not being treated well, I'm not given preference, or my whatever, I'm not being noticed, and all of that. So, for people who run organizations, it is very important to ensure that people are being appreciated and their feelings are actually being considered and all of that, because when these things are not done, it can bring about stress in the work environment and then make someone to start experiencing the symptoms of stress, mental exhaustion, and burnout, and can also lead to unproductivity, right, in the work environment. It means that the person may just be working but not giving in their best, right? So we've mentioned three things that can cause stress in the work environment. We've talked about doing more than you can do. We've talked about several other things. And now we're going to talk about work life balance, right? When you're working and you haven't balanced your out of job whatever, when you're not at the office, what do you do in your house? Do you take, of course, when you're working, there should be time for work and there should be time for family. When it is time for work, you don't bring in family issues. When it is time for family issues, you don't bring in work. So you try to set boundaries between your work and family. Right. So these things are very important. When there is conflict in the family and it is not properly handled, you would recognize or you would realize that the person may start experiencing stress, and then it will now get into the work that they are doing and kind of disrupt things for them. So it is very important to ensure that if there is a problem at home, you sort it out. You find ways to ensure that the problems you have in the house, family problem, relationship problem, personal problems, are properly sorted out. What this means is that you should take care of yourself, right? You should take care of your emotions. Don't, when you're experiencing whatever it is that is outside your work environment, you can't just say, well, it is just when I get home I'll fix it, right? It doesn't concern my job, it doesn't concern my business here. What you have to understand is that once there is a disruption, once there is a stressor, whether it is not job related or whether it is job related, it would definitely affect your productivity and performance. So you need to take care of yourself if you don't want to be stressed at work, right? You need to take care of whatever you need to take care of. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of all of that so that you cannot be stressed at work, so that you would remain productive, right? So that is very, very important. When you don't properly take care of yourself, it can also contribute to stress in the work environment. And when there is a bad relationship at the workplace, when you don't have good relationship with the people at work, or when the there's a management crisis, you have problem with management and all of that. When I say management, I mean maybe people who are higher than you in the work environment, and you didn't find a way to resolve it, or find a way to, yeah, basically resolve it, right? You would find out that you will start being stressed, or you start feeling stressed in the work environment. And that can also lead to the symptoms that we are going to talk about, the symptoms of stress that we are going to talk about. So, right, when you're in a work environment, so we are going to talk about what are the symptoms, what are the symptoms of the stress that we are talking about. We have talked about the things that can stress us in the work environment. So, we are going to talk about what are the symptoms, how do I know that this is stress? And then we talk about what we can do to manage it, right? But basically, from this that we've talked about, do you have anything to say? Do you have? I like to ask questions in between, right? So that I know that you're not missing out and you're following. So, do we have any one or two questions that we want to ask about what I've talked about, right?
Right.
About, all
So
right.
we do have a question from Alexandra, and she says, how do we enlarge our capacity?
Okay. All right, Alexandra, it is very important before you can enlarge your capacity, right? You have to, first of all, know what your limit is, right? We all have limits. You have to understand. For instance, there are some people that when they stay awake for a long time or for a longer time, they start feeling headache, right? Some people don't feel that way. Some people, if they have to stay away from food for a while, they start feeling dizzy. Some people don't feel that way. So you have to be able to find out this thing, this capacity that is expected of me, or this job that is expected of me, or this change that is expected of me. Do I have, first of all, do I have the personal capacity to manage it? Right? So if you do not have, then there is no point accepting it, because these are like biological processes. For something as simple as getting a headache, when you, of course, is regular, but some people don't get that. We have certain tolerance thresholds. Everybody has tolerance thresholds. So you should be able to identify your threshold of or your tolerance level. And then you should also know your personality and be able to. So it is only when you know your personality, you know, it's just like for someone who probably they have more like a withdrawn personality. They are not a people's person. And you have been working in a position that does not really require you to be a people's person, and then now there is a need for you to enlarge your capacity, or you take on a role that requires you to be a people's person. For someone who is naturally a people's person, this would not be stressful. But for someone who is not naturally a people's person, you have to put measures in place. Maybe going to therapy, maybe start making research, learning how to communicate with people, because you're going outside your threshold, right? So for you to be able to enlarge your capacity, you need to know your threshold, you need to understand your capacity, you need to know the time, you need to know when it is a no for you, right? There's no point accepting something when you know that I really can't do this. When something is a no for you, if you go ahead and do it, you would be stressed. There are no two ways about it. So for you
Mm,
to be able to enlarge your capacity, know when to say no. Ah, this one is no. This one is a no for me. It's a no go area. I can't do
right.
it.
And I
Right?
think this is also tied with one of the questions, which was, how do you suggest we enlarge our capacity when taking up more roles? Because the economy as it is today is really tight, if I could use that word. And
Yeah.
because of that, we want to do more. We want to be able to have more money, right? We want to be able to accommodate a lot more, should I say, a lot more, right? For as a woman who has a family. So the question now is, what are some ways? And I know there was another question that Alexandra had, which is how she has heard about positive stress and time stress. So which of that is good? Maybe because I want us to go into the point where we're able to sort of interact and ask more questions, because I feel like our women do have a lot more questions and I want us to cover as much as possible. So maybe if you could just touch on the positive stress and the time stress and
Okay.
which is good.
All right. So I'd also want to confirm the person that asked, "How do you enlarge your capacity?" Have I answered your question?
Alexander? Yes, she says
Okay,
yes.
she said yeah. Okay. All right. So we should talk about what again? Positive stress, right?
Yes,
And
and
what
time
again?
stress. And she says which is good.
Okay. Well, stress is stress, and stress is not good, right? Stress is stress, and stress is not good. Stress is a problem. There is no stress. When I define stress, I told us that it is more like a stretch, more like there is something in the environment or in the person's environment stretching, stressing them, right? So stress itself is not good. It's just like, the normal biological process. When somebody is sick, it means there is probably a bacteria, a fungi, a virus, or whatever it is that has crept in and destabilized the body um, biological system, and the person starts having symptoms. So when stress gets into the space, the body space, let me just put it that way, there is a problem. So stress is not good, right? You can say that maybe what they would say that positive stress is okay when you're stretching yourself in a way that it benefits you, or in a way that the benefit outweighs the disadvantages, right? But that doesn't mean that stress is good. That also doesn't mean that if it is something beyond your capacity or beyond what you can take and you're stretching yourself to go beyond that, that doesn't mean that it is good, right?
Okay.
So yeah, for the purpose of what we want to talk about, let's just see it this way. Although stress itself is bad, but when it is positive stress, we can say that okay, I am pushing myself beyond my capacity in a way that it is more beneficial to me than than it is, like the advantages is more than the disadvantages, right?
Right.
So this is what I need to do to move forward, right? This is, I have to come out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more like
Okay.
I need to come out of my comfort zone and push myself harder, not beyond my capacity. I like to
Right.
put, and I like to quote that, right? You're pushing
Okay.
yourself harder because you already know your capacity, you know what is a no. So going beyond that is like causing a problem that you still come back to come and solve, unless you have decided that okay, whatever problems comes out, I have ways that I want to solve it. right? If I don't sleep well and I start having headache, I will take paracetamol, or I will do this or I will do that, right? But let's just see it in this context that positive stress is more like coming out of your comfort zone, pushing yourself harder in order to achieve something that has more advantages to you than the disadvantages, right?
Right,
Have I
right.
answered your question,
That would be for Alexandra again, and
Alexandra?
she says yes, yes,
All right.
yes.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna quickly go on to the next question because a lot of questions are coming in.
All
And
right.
Hafisat says, what steps can be taken to identify stressors?
All right. So you would be able to identify stressors when you start experiencing the symptoms of stress,
Okay.
right? For instance, if you start experiencing something like irritability, we know what irritability is, right? When somebody's, would I call it edgy? I don't know the word to use, but when somebody's easily angered, right? Someone that would usually want to stay around people, laugh, have fun. Now they can't take anything. They can't take something as simple as noise, not like too much noise, but maybe when you have children around you and they are playing and you're like, shut up, everybody shut up, you're making too much noise, you know, or something as much as your phone is ringing and you get angry. Who's calling me again? Why are they calling me? Those kind of or when somebody says something that is not supposed to naturally piss you off and you go overboard and you're very angry, you start responding, and the person is like, oh, this thing doesn't make you angry before. Why are you angry? Right? So when you start noticing that you're becoming very irritable, you know that, of course, irritability is not only a symptom of stress, but it is also a symptom of some mood disorders like anxiety, depression, and all of that. But it can start with just a body's response to stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Workplace
right.
stress, financial stress, emotional, especially emotional stress. When you see people who had a broken relationship, maybe somebody, it was as bad as somebody being stood up on the altar, and then you, maybe the person that experienced it, over time you start realizing, I'm becoming very irritable, right? You need to understand that stress has happened, and irritability is one major symptoms that when you start experiencing it, you need to watch out and find and ask yourself. Then you start searching, what are the possible things in my environment that are
Hmm.
stressing me? Have I had emotional breakdown? Have I had a traumatic experience, something like rape? Some people, when they experience rape, after some time they start experiencing these things, right? So irritability, when you start experiencing something like irritability, you know that that is a warning sign.
Right. And I think this leads on to the next question, which is I know Urma asked a question and she says,
Okay.
please how different are stress and depression? And I think there's a definite bold line that differentiates both in a way. It almost sounds like stress is the umbrella, and then depression, creeps in that umbrella, and they all are one. However, when I know that I'm stressed, I know that I feel this way. How do I then regain my focus? Which is a question that Aishat asked. How do I regain my focus, especially when I feel like my inner innovation or motivation is no longer there? If you could quickly just touch on that so we could move on to the
Okay.
next question.
All right. Although the irritability is not the only symptoms of stress, right? So
Yes.
maybe after some time, we're just going to just mention them so that we'll be wary of them and know that these are warning signs, right? So when you're dealing with, like you said, stress and depression are not the same thing, but stress can lead to depression. That's what I want us to understand. Stress can lead to depression over time. It can transcend to mental health conditions if not properly managed, right? So depression is a mental health condition. It is It's a clinical problem that sometimes requires medication. But when it is stress, if you're able to manage the stress properly, you could get better. But when it becomes depression, you need treatment. Although it must not be treatment with medication, but you would definitely need psychotherapy, right? So that is it. Stress can lead to depression. Depression itself is a mental health condition that requires treatment.
Right. And so it means that stress can lead to trauma as well as,
Yes,
in
it
the body
can.
and the mind. Okay. So
Yeah,
I
it
think
can lead to
Alexander,
a lot of things, right?
right.
And
And I think
even
Alexander,
biological sicknesses.
in-
Yeah.
interesting. I think Alexander, that answers your question. And then there's a question here by Blessing, and she says, in terms of dealing with people in the workspace who have a particular, who have a particular type of people that they work with and leave you in the dark. How do you advise to deal with such situation? Because it seems like I don't care and I'm being nonchalant about my work. I don't know if you understand that question.
Okay, let me try and understand it in terms of dealing with people in the workspace who have a particular people they like to work with and leave you in the dark. How do you advise you deal with such situation? All right, I would recommend that you do your job, right? Like I said in the beginning, I talked about workplace relationship contributing to stress
So,
in the work.
Chioma, I'm sorry that I'm trying to, but I think this is something I've dealt with myself personally, where
Okay.
you're sort of in an environment where everybody leaves you in the dark. They don't want to associate with you. And as much as you say, do your work, it's really tough, especially when you're not carried along, when you're just left to be like an island. How do I deal in that kind of situation? It's really tough. Because again, I'm human. I want to talk to people. I want people to relate with me. But when it seems like I'm left alone, maybe a few persons are speaking to me, but the people that I would expect that should speak to me are not. How do I deal in that kind of situation? Because it can play with my mind.
Of course, it can contribute to, it can become a mental health stressor in the work environment. So, first of all, we have to understand that in the work environment, the people you're working with are not your friends, they are your colleagues, right? They are your colleagues. That's one. Two, I usually recommend that when you're faced with something that is like this, we call it problems, and there's something we call solution focused therapy, right? You'll be able to identify what is a problem and then proceed to how do I solve it. Bothering about it, thinking about it will not solve it. So for this, we'll discuss the possible solutions. Number one solution that I would always give people is to evaluate yourself and ask yourself, do I have the capacity? There are some people that if this is happening to, they don't care. They won't be bothered. Their own is, I will do my job, I'll collect my salary and I'll go. There are some people that this would really, really bother and be a problem too. So if this is really a bother and a problem to the person, there is no need continuing in that work environment. Because if you continue to stay there, you would continue to experience that stress, and you have not removed, there's no way to remove the stress, right? If you can have conversation, if there are people that have understanding, you can have a conversation around it, or maybe have a conversation with a bigger person or a managerial authority that can help to handle it. But when you know that there is nobody to have conversation with about this that can help to change things, so the first thing when you're experiencing this kind of thing is to look for, are there people I can talk to about this in the organization that can help and ensure that this does not continue to happen? Let's iron it out. Why are you behaving this way? This is not an ideal behavior in the workplace environment, right? So it should be taken up and it should be handled. But when you have told that route and there is no solution, we talked about solution focused therapy, identifying problems and solving them. So you've tried to talk about it with these people first of all, and there's no change. They don't give you any responsible reason why they are behaving that way. You go ahead with management, you talk about it, and maybe they shove it under the carpet and they don't do anything about it. What are the other options that you have? The other option that you have is to walk away.
Right. That's
And
amazing.
yeah, you'd walk away. But if you
That-
don't want to walk away, you have to find a way to deal with it.
So,
So
I totally get that, and I think definitely that does answer the question.
yeah.
And this sort of leads me to one question, and I guess we can take one more question before we close out. However, I am a mother, um, and I had my kids and all of that, but I needed to go back to work. And just the thought of going back to work killed me or is killing me. Now, one question I wanted to ask is, um, how do I manage? I'm just anxious because I'm having to juggle the pains of, birth. I'm also having to juggle, taking care of my young one. And then I'm also having to juggle being with my husband and ensuring that our relationship is thriving. But I'm about to go to work, and I know that my work will definitely require long hours. Please help me. How do I tackle the entire row of, massive work that I need to do? How do I manage my children? How do I make sure I give that full attention as a woman? How do I make sure I give attention to my husband? How do I make sure that I'm able to fulfill the task at work? What do I do?
Okay, it's a very difficult situation. A very, very difficult situation. I talked about it being an African woman, or even if you're not in Nigeria, wherever you are, it is difficult to navigate motherhood, navigate relationship, and also be productive at work, right? But boundary, this is where boundary setting comes in, and this is where effective communication comes in, right? You need to be able to communicate with your loved one. You should have productive communication around what are their needs, right? So, as you're going to work, what is the need of your partner? You should be able to identify their needs and discuss with the person on if there can be compromise, right? More like a mutual agreement. So point out all those things that you fear that when you start working, it can start. Is it your sex life with your partner? Is it your ability to make them dinner? Is it your ability to spend quality time with them? You need to point those things out. Write them out if possible in a bullet point and find out how to solve it collectively. Discuss with your partner. So if I come back at work from work tired and I'm not able to have sex, what are other options that we have? Do we create time and say, okay, if I don't work weekends, can we use weekend to do this? If we used to have sex, maybe as you're staying at home, maybe you used to have sex like maybe 4 or 5 times. I don't know how people do it, right? So you need to have conversations around what is it going to be now, and then make sure that there is mutual agreement, right? So when it comes to cooking, what do we do? Do we buy takeout? Do we cook and stock up the fridge? Do we hire help? So these are things that you need to talk to your partner about, especially when it concerns relationship. Talk about it. Have a conversation about it. Look for solutions. Do I need to hire help? Do I need to, if it's cooking, do I need to cook and stock up? Do we buy a takeout? Have conversations around these things. If I'm not giving you a quality time, how do we handle it? Right? Can you cope for now? Or just make sure that you have this conversation before you start. And then also, when you have had this conversation and you have solved these problems, right, you would find out that you find it easy to to transcend it back into the work environment. Because the reason why your mind is not prepared is because there are these nagging problems around that you don't
Right.
know how to solve. So once you
Yeah.
solve this, the problem is sorted out, right? The mind basically controls the whole thing about us. That's why there's this therapy would always use. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. We believe that the way people cognize, perceive things, actually can lead to positive, negative emotions, positive, negative behaviors, and even mental health conditions. So once you are able to solve those nagging problem in the mind and lay out solutions to it, it will not be difficult to transcend to your work environment. And the work environment where you're also going to, you have to also, make inquiries, find out what are the things obtainable there, what can they be lenient with, and just
Right.
know what is compatible with you. If it's not compatible with you, there is no need taking up that role. You have to wait for the one that you're sure that it puts your needs into consideration.
Absolutely, because again, it is true when they say everyone is replaceable. So thinking about yourself first and prioritizing yourself is key, which leads to one of the questions I have here by Aishat, and she says, how do we regain focus after a stressful event or a stressful experience, especially when the stressor are no longer present? How do I regain that focus? How do I come back to a place where I used to be, or and even better?
Okay. So when you're done with stress, right? When you have dealt with stress, the best way to regain yourself, I would put it that way, there are measures that you have to put in place. Because for instance, when you have a wound and the wound has healed, yeah, the scar will be there. Sometimes when you experience traumatic events, very stressful, especially when it is acute stress, when the stress has gone, you might have developed what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. Not all the time. Even if the person hasn't developed post-traumatic stress disorder, the person might still be dealing. For instance, I would give an example with rape. When somebody experiences rape, right, the trauma, the rape is no more there, but the person might have that inability to relate well with men, right? Whenever they see a man, they feel like, oh, this person is coming to attack me, this person is coming to take this from me, and because of that they will not open up, right? So first of all, you need to identify the cognitive biases that you have developed due to that stress. When what I mean by cognitive biases, let me give you an example. I will still use rape as an example. When somebody has experienced rape, they might be seeing all men as rapists. That is a perception. When they see a male gender, the first thing that comes to their mind is rapist, 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 right? And because of that, they may withdraw. They may not want to associate with that person. So you need to be able to identify the cognitive biases, perspectives, belief systems, thoughts that come to your mind as a result of that stress that you went through, and then you put them down. When you put them down, you restructure it.
So,
Restructuring.
Chioma,
Okay.
I'm sorry that I needed to cut you off, but there was something that I had seen recently. There was this woman who came on social media and she was talking about her story. Now, from a very little age, she had different problems from being molested by, her uncle, to being left out by her dad, and then she was shipped away to stay with her grandmom, and her stepsister never accepted her. And what really hurt her was her stepsister knew that she was being molested by the uncle, but never interfered, never wanted to help, just because the stepsister felt that, like, the mom, which they shared the same mother, obviously, had more love for her as against the stepsister. Now, this lady grew into an age where she became an adult, but she felt that it was better to sleep with animals as against with men. Eventually, she sort of went for therapy, and after, I would say, it wasn't much of a therapy, to be honest with you, but it was more of opening up about her story. And when she was done with this, the expectation was that, a lot more help and assistance was going to be provided, which was what was promised to her. But we found out that along the line, she committed suicide, and that was the end of the story. Now, for someone who has been through this type of um, trauma, this type of stress, this type of depression, frustration, and just had been left out all her life, what would you say, or what would have been the best approach to ensure that she had the help? She received the help that she needed after she had, thrown out her story to the world.
That's a very big one, right? First of all, people have to understand that some situations require you or the person to be longer in therapy, right? You can't just take someone who has experienced that degree of trauma and just have 1 month, 2 months. Sometimes people go as far as being in therapy for 2 years. And while they are in therapy, you have to track their progress because there could be relapse. Just because somebody is going on and doing well, she probably experienced a relapse and then it went that way. So she's not supposed to be left out just like that. As a therapist, as a counselor, you're supposed to be continually supportive in therapy, tracking their progress until you're sure that they have properly dealt with that trauma and integrated into life or into their environment. You can't just throw them out like that. That was what happened, right? She was just given like a basic first aid and then thrown out. So she should have been given consistent intervention, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and there should also create like a support group. Whoever was managing her should have ensured that she goes into a support group, right? In therapy, depending on how severe somebody's case is, while having therapy or having intervention, we can ensure that the person has a support group of people who have dealt with something similar. So they talk about their progress, they talk about when this came up, how did you handle it, and also ensure that they remain in a non-judgmental safe zone, right? Because if this person continues to hear things like, oh, look at her, she's this, she's that, especially it takes a lot of vulnerability for you to be able to come out and throw your story open. And the responses that people give can make the person to feel worse. So we need to ensure that you train or you educate these people on how to, or this person on the capacity on how to deal with these criticisms and the people's opinion that may come as a result of the story they have shared or about to share. So these are things that they should have prepared this person for. This story that you are sharing, does this person can have this opinion, but they are entitled to their own opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and their opinion does not define you. Nobody's opinion defines you, right? We have different perspective based on our personality, environment, but that does not mean that anybody's opinion or perspective defines you. So if somebody is having a perspective about you, that does not define who you are. What defines who you are is the perspective you have about yourself. So first of all, this person needed to stay longer in therapy, needed
Right.
to be supported longer, needed a support group, and needed psychoeducation on how to deal with the
Yeah.
effects of what they have shared or how people will respond. So that was what caused that. Oh, it's quite painful. It's quite painful. I don't like to hear
Yeah,
stories like
I
that.
know, I know. It was such a viral story online, and I don't think I would forget it in any time, in time to come. But yeah, it does happen, and it's just very unfortunate. But I just want to thank you, Chioma. You did more than enough Honestly,
Thank
you did more
you.
than enough today. We absolutely appreciate you. And thank you to everyone, who's here, who sent their questions, from Aisha to Alexandra. Alexandra, thank you so much. We did see you in the Level Up Your Money session, and you sent more than enough questions. I absolutely love it. Thank you to Blessing. Thank you to Iwurama. Thank you. To Hafisat as well. Thank you to everyone who has been very much engaging. Please send in your thank yous to Chioma as she steps out from today's session. Thank you, Chioma. I hope you love us more than enough to want to come back again, because we will definitely need
Definitely.
you to come back again. I don't think we took more than enough from you today, but I know that I loved this session. Thank you so much. Thank you
All
for all
right.
the information, the advice, your wealth of knowledge. It has been golden nuggets that we would leave to remember. And thank you to the entire community, as well as to our Wentors, and also to the team here at Wentors. I do hope that you have a lovely rest of the day and a wonderful weekend. I have also shared Chioma's LinkedIn profile here on the chat. Do well to reach out to her. She's such an amazing person. She will respond to you. She's quite soft, and I love it. She'll definitely respond to you and provide more information. If you need her services, she's well more available to do that as well. Thank you, everyone, for the thank you. I love it. Esther, yes. Blessing, Irene, Alexandra. Thank you again, women. Thank you, everyone, for such an amazing event. You made this happen. Thank you, Choma, once again. And this is it from me. While I say, do have a lovely, lovely, lovely weekend ahead. Bye, everyone. Bye, Choma. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Alexandra. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Yes.